let's talk about immigration.
Sure.
So if you're Canadian and you're considering making that life-changing decision to immigrate to the US, the immigration process could be very daunting. However, if you have the right information, you do the research, you don't need to hire a immigration lawyer to do this.
Not
It
necessary.
just takes time.
And money.
We can't forget the money.
Yeah.
So today we're going to go through a step-by-step process of the immigration process, and hopefully this will be able to help you.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Brenda Jackson, otherwise known as B. I'm retired from a 30-year career as a certified financial planner. I'm in my 50s with a lot of life, the experience and the expertise I'd like to share with you. And today we're lucky to have my husband, Leon, join us, because he had to endure a lot of the stress on the immigration process.
Yes.
So let's start with this first step number 1. So the first one is determine your eligibility. So before you start going down this process, you should make sure that you're eligible in some way or form. There are so many different categories, whether it's for employment, whether it's family relationships, or
Humanitarian.
humanitarian. Yes. So those are the things that you need to know and you need to research to see your eligibility.
Yeah.
For us, it was the family relations. So we will, because I am a dual citizen, I was born in the US, only lived there when I was a baby. Lived in Canada. My parents are Canadian. Leon is Canadian. Yeah. Our boys are Canadian. So our process has to do with family relation, family sponsorship. So me being the petitioner. Yeah. So the second one is understanding the US categories. There are so many categories and they are based on employment, family relationships. They are special circumstances, specialties, but know and determine the category that best suits you. And sometimes it's hard to determine what that category would be. And sometimes having an immigration lawyer for a quick consult could help. Yeah. Right? So, yeah. I mean, we had to use
We did that at the start of ours just to confirm we were on the right path and we were using the correct form, because there's no refund once you submit a form.
The money goes. So if you make a mistake and you're in the wrong category, bye-bye money. Yeah. So, and the process has to start all over again.
Yeah.
So the step number 3, once you know step 1 and 2, step 3 is gathering the information. They want your birth certificate. They want your passport. They want your marriage certificate, divorce certificate, maybe death certificate. They want the details. Yeah. And you're going to have to supply that at the time that you apply. And yes, it's going to be copies, but eventually you're going to need those originals. So just make sure they're in a safe spot, because you will need them.
Yeah, for sure.
So the next one is completing the application form. And that's where Leon came in, and he started filling and taking the time out to fill out the forms that we required.
Yeah. Well, as Brenda mentioned, we did consult, as we were figuring out the process, we did consult an immigration lawyer for half an hour just to confirm we were on the right path and we were choosing the right application, the right forms to fill out. In our case, we were filling out the I-130. In each application, myself, Carter, and Ryder, we each had to fill out an I-130 form for each of us. They're not hard to fill out, but as typical government forms are, they can be puzzling and leave you questioning, okay, what are they actually looking for in this box here? So take your time, be diligent. Patience is always the key.
That's why he did the forms.
And like I said, they're not hard, but they're not small forms either. It's not a 1-page application. I believe the I-130 might have been a dozen pages, but some of the stuff is redundant in there that you don't actually fill in information, but it's still a fairly lengthy document.
And that's why, sorry to interrupt, that's why we're going to end up having a separate video on how to fill that out, just to confirm where we needed confirmation that we were filling the forms out correct. We're
Yeah.
going to be doing that on a separate video.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that.
No, absolutely. And then once we fill them out, of course, the government likes their money, so you have to pay the fees before you submit it. At the time we submitted them in the spring of 2022, they were $535 per application. No credit cards, so just be aware of that. The government portal, the website you're using does not accept credit cards. So it was like a debit transaction in US denomination only. So our case, we had opened up US bank accounts, so we were able to provide them with a US denomination that they were looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And which made it very simplified
Yeah.
when it comes to the payment process, because that's not the only place that you are going to end up paying.
Yeah. and your application will not be looked at until the fees have been received. So just be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're going through the application, so you have your documents, you have your applications, you've paid the fees. Now you're basically waiting for the government to look at your application, your documents, to say that, okay, you've been approved.
Yes. Yay.
So
After-
hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait.
And it was several months waiting for that, for the I-130s to be approved. Once the I-130s are approved, the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, will move your file to the National Visa Center.
But before they do that, just to keep in mind is that the approvals are not going to be at the same time. They're individual, whether you're a family or not, whether you request it or not, they still will not come. And it could be months. I think Leon's was the first one that we applied for, but it was the last one that was, no, Carter was the last one approved. Ryder was the last one that we submitted, but he was the first one approved.
Yeah.
So it was so
Random.
yeah.
Random. It doesn't make a lot of sense figuring out the timelines, but.
And even though you had the website that you can look and you have your own account that you can monitor the process, they do list the times, but you do have to wait. And sometimes those wait times do change. So when you inquire, they'll have that time frame in there to say you're still within the time frame. Well, a time frame changed, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that was like, you know, it was kind of stressful. And another thing to note, because you're trying to build your way up to making the move, that if you move or make any changes, you have a certain amount of days to notify the government, US government,
that you've moved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So don't forget to do that.
Yeah. And then they need that in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, the USCIS will send your file to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center then basically takes control of the applications. They will provide, each application will be provided with a unique case number. You'll have a portal where you can go online, and that's where you'll fill out the next steps in the process. Again, the fees, they love their fees. Your portal will be present, but will not be active until you pay them the fees that they're looking for.
More money.
Yeah. And this one was actually less than the I-130, which. But anyway, same thing, no credit cards, US denomination, so a debit transaction, similar to an e-transfer, but somewhat different again in the US. But again, I think it was 2 to 3 days before our portals were active. And then you're sitting there waiting in limbo until those are active.
Right.
Part of the process too from the National Visa Center is they'll send you links to your portal, obviously. And then there will be another link for a 12-step process that you must follow in order to fill out your next stage of the application.
12 steps?
12 steps.
Really?
You can't jump forward. Step 1 has to be done, then 2. You have to go in that process because it doesn't do you any good, and you'll end up going back to the process you finished at anyway. The applications they're live online and they save automatically. So if you don't finish a portion, you can come back in the next day and carry on where you left off. Same thing, USCIS asks for a whole bunch of documents, your birth certificate, marriage certificates, divorce certificates, that kind of stuff. The same thing will be asked for in this stage. And they'll also ask for your financial information. Again, Brenda's case, she was the petitioner for us, being a U.S. citizen. So for Brenda, we had to supply an affidavit of support for each one of us.
Which was
providing-
different
yeah, which
between
was-
for you and the kids. It was
Yeah.
two different forms.
Different forms, but similar in the sense. So what you're trying to do is the government is trying to find out, well, okay, because I'm not a permanent resident, I can't work. Is Brenda able to support the family while I'm looking for work? That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So any financial information, they'll be asking for that. Also, be aware that this is the U.S. So the forms in Canada, like a T4, is different than a form in the U.S. So
But they'll keep on asking you for
The US form.
U.S. form because as a dual citizen, I file my income taxes in both countries, U.S. and Canada, whether I made income in the U.S. or
Correct.
not.
Yeah.
So it's still, I do not end up having that form. What is that form
it was
called?
the one they wanted was a 1099 form, and they kept asking us for it. And I think 2 or 3 times they asked, and I said, well, Canada doesn't have a 1099. We have a T4A.
T4A,
So-
so that's what we
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
submit. But
Yeah.
and that's another point that I wanted to make. If all of a sudden you're at a standstill with the National Visa Center, it's usually because something never happened in
Yeah.
regards to your case. So in our case, we thought we submitted to say that Canada doesn't have that form, but they didn't really care. They wanted us to send that form again to them. So we needed to go back onto that site to submit it again. And then things finally moved forward.
Yeah, and that's the thing, as you're moving forward, you're gonna fill out the application, you're gonna submit the application, then they're gonna say, okay, submit all your supporting documents, which, as I mentioned, were, the certificates, the financials, all that kind of stuff. And the process will continue. Then the National Visa Center will say, we've accepted everything, or we haven't accepted anything, or we need more information. So again, be aware of that. If they need info, get it to them right away. The longer you wait is the longer it takes for your process to be approved.
Yeah.
So it's very important. Don't procrastinate. When they're looking for information, they want it right away.
Yeah.
Again, once that's submitted, yay, now you gotta wait.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, hurry
Hurry
up
up
and
and
wait.
submit it and wait, and then you get a notification to say, "Oh, here's your interview."
Yeah, so that'll basically the next step. They'll say,
Yeah.
yes, everything's been approved, and we're gonna schedule you an interview date. You'll get an email with that date scheduled. It's incumbent upon you, and you must go and register.
And don't
Your
forget
interview.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget, register your interview with the U.S. consulate that they have chosen. Once again, you don't get to choose where you're going for your interview. They choose it for you. And then after that's been registered with the U.S. consulate, it's up to you to get a medical.
And
Each
get
app-
on it right
Yeah.
away.
Each applicant has to do a medical regardless of age. We thought the kids would have been exempt, but they had to do a medical. Unfortunately, you're bound by the rules of the U.S. government, and you have 5 doctors in the country of Canada that are approved to do U.S. medicals for for immigrant visas. So you have to go to wherever is most convenient for yourself, I guess, to do the medical at your cost.
Exactly. So you're flying. In our case, we had to fly to Vancouver. Then for the consulate, we had to go to Montreal.
Yeah.
Then for Leon's consulate, he had to go to Calgary for the pickup.
Yeah.
So it's going to be costly, especially if you apply in Canada. You have to finish off in Canada.
Yes.
You can't apply in Canada and then finish it off in,
Yes,
in
that's
the
a good-
U.S.
a good
and
point.
So we have to be mindful of that, and also to be mindful about the medical. So even though we applied for 2022, the kids have different rules and their ages are different for different medicals.
Yeah.
Ryder never changed because he went from 10 to 11.
Yeah.
But Carter being 14 to 15, all of a sudden the medical changed,
Requirements changed.
vaccination changed. So we got caught. We almost got caught.
Yeah.
But we got it, rectified, and we're here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then you attend your interview. It wasn't very hard. It was more waiting. They provide a number. Like we thought all four of us were going to be in the interview.
No.
Brenda being the petitioner, but they kicked her
out
right away.
be
Said no.
outside. Wait, well, how long? However long it takes.
Yeah.
So 3 hours.
It was about 3 hours.
About 3 hours.
3 hour process.
Yeah.
And it was more waiting than anything. It wasn't hard. They call you up. You provide them all the hard copy, your original documents. That's what. Be aware that you must bring your originals of what you had submitted online, because they need to see those originals. They'll take them, photocopy them, hand them back to you.
Yeah.
And in the case for the boys, we knew going in that they potentially could take our passports for up to 2 weeks. But during the interview, I asked them, I said, well, the boys are in school. They need to be in school. They're going to school in Texas. And they said, no problem. Because all the boys' information was there, their medicals were there already. They just put the immigrant visa right in the passports, and we were able to pick them up on the following Monday. So that was really good that way.
Yeah, and then when that happened, then you are free to go you have to go through the border.
Yeah.
So what do they call it? Port of entry.
Port of entry.
You have to go there, and we went through there. You give them your passports, the boys' passports. There's a special page on that passport. Then they take you to the back of the immigration, which is normal, so don't panic. And then you just wait for them to call you. They ask you questions. Be as a petitioner, you need to have your social security card and your ID. Yeah. So make sure you have it on you, because they will require that. And then it was like, okay, you can go.
Yeah.
But for Leon, it's different because he was given an envelope.
Yeah.
An envelope that you cannot open.
I'm not allowed to open. Yeah.
And tell them what happened when you went through customs.
Yeah, well, in my case, my medical results weren't in right away, so they took my passport. So I was in Canada for 2 weeks waiting for the passport to be picked up. So same thing. Once I went in, I had to bring the sealed envelope with me to the U.S. Customs. They grabbed it. Initially, the girl that was there hadn't seen one before. Yeah. So of course she conferred with one of her colleagues, and they took me into the back. Similar thing, just asked me a few basic questions, stamped it, and said, "Welcome to the U.S." And that was pretty much it.
And here we are. So so now it's just, it's funny because we got Carter's Social Security in regular mail, and now we just have to wait for the remaining documents, because they do ask you for what your address is in the U.S. Yeah. And we, fortunately had an address, so we ended up getting some of the information. So here we are. We'll keep you posted. Have future videos. So remember to subscribe so you don't miss out, or check out my website on things that are happening in the blogs at www.brendabjackson.com for information and more videos and blogs on this. So thank you for listening. Let this life be our best life, and I look forward to connecting again with y'all.